Day 5, Part 2, the practical implementation of the basic QBASIC statements that we discussed in our previous theoretical portion. So now in this session, we are going to see the practical implementation of all of those commands, whatever we have discussed in our Day 5 Part 1 video. So if you have missed out to see that video Part 1 of the Day 5, I suggest you all to go through that, without which you will not be able to understand what we are supposed to do right now. So without wasting your precious time, let's jump ahead in a practical session of your Day 5 Part 1. So I'm going to open now QBASIC and we'll see all of those statements one by one. Okay, so the first statement that we discussed last time was the CLS, and the main purpose of using the CLS in our QBASIC was actually to make sure that we clear the previously run output. Okay, now if I run it, it's going to give this output, welcome. Okay, now again I am writing the new program. Again, let's say second data. Now if I run it, what will be the output? You make a guess. Previous output is also going to stick on a screen. See here. Whereas if I see in my screen, there is no previous output. If I run it now, 3 outputs. That means whenever you start writing a program, the first thing that you need to do is to clear the previously run output. That means the output that is still in its cache actually. So if I run it now, it's going to clear everything from the screen. See, done. So the main purpose of CLS is to clear the output screen. And we also talk about another statement in our theoretical portion, that was the end. Of course, the end statement is used to terminate the program. So that's why you also make a habit of using the end statement. Okay. Now, the next important statement that we discussed in our theoretical portion was the print statement. And print is an output statement and it is going to help you to execute the data on the screen. So let's say, for example, if I write print, welcome to our new, let's say, journey of, you can write anything. Okay. Now, if I end and run, it's going to display the data as it is. Why? Because a print statement is used to execute the data. So that's why it's displaying all the contents over the screen. But it's not mandatory that you print the data only in a form of a string. What about if I type this number along with the association of the print? Will it give the output? Make a quick guess now. Will it give or not? Answer is yes, it's going to display that. Why? Because the print statement is used to execute whatever you write over the screen. Okay, but there are certain protocols that you need to follow. So print statement is going to display the content over the screen. That means after processing any type of data, you need to use a print statement to display those processed data. Okay, now the next statement that we discussed in our previous one was the rem. Rem, if you remember, we discussed that rem is a non-executable statement. Rem is not going to display. That means the data, whatever is been associated, the statement or the message is not going to get displayed. The main purpose of rem is just to give a remark to the programmer. So for example, if I write that, let's say displaying name and address, for example. Now this is simply remark. When I run the program, these statements are not going to be displayed. So for example, let's say Ram, the name, and I would like to also print the address. Okay. Let's say Ayodhya. And if I run this program, what will be the output? Will it display the second line displaying name and address? No, it's going to display only Ram and Ayodhya. Why? The purpose of rem statement is simply to give a remark to the programmer, not to the output screen. So let's have a look. If I run it, it's not going to display. Why? This is simply your non-executable state. Whatever you write over here, this is non-executable. You can write over here testing also. No problem. It's going to accept this, see now. But in output, it's not going to display. So that's why make sure that whenever you use the rem statement, you need to make sure, or you need to understand, having a clear concept or clear understanding that rem is simply a remark to the programmer. Okay, just to keep in mind. Otherwise, the rest of the things are not going to be displayed associated with the rem statement. So I hope I made it clear. Now the next statement that we're going to discuss, that's very important, that is the let statement. So let statement, if you remember, as per the theoretical portion of our previous video, let statement is used to assign a value into a variable. That means A is equals to 20, let's say. Let B is equals to 30. Then let C is equals to A plus B. Then I'm going to print C end. Now over here, this let statement is helping you to assign this value into this variable A. I repeat again, let statement is used to assign a value into a variable. So that's why all of these variables are able to assign or store the process data in it. So if I run the program, what will be the output? If you make a guess, I guess you're right, that is 50. See here. So what if you write a program without using a let statement? Will it execute? Obviously it's going to execute. Then what is the difference between writing a program using a let or without let? The main purpose of using this let statement is simply to assign a value into a variable. That is obviously done over here also, but that is a proper format as per the protocol of writing the program. So that's why I suggest each one of you to make a habit of writing a program. Whenever you assign in a program any value, make a habit of using the let statement, because the let statement means to allow user to assign a value into any type of variable. It might be your numeric or it might be your string as well. I hope so it was easy. Now the next statement that we are going to see the practical use as per the theoretical explanation of your previous class, that is the Lprint. And if you remember, Lprint is to redirect this statement into a printer. But since we do not have associated printer over here, so that's why it's not going to print it. But for example, I'd like to show you Lprint, okay, welcome. If I run it and see what's going to happen. Start. Now it says press any key to continue, but it was not shown in our previous program, any of the sample we did for the coding, because it is actually contacting to the some sort of printer that we do not have over here. It is used for the printing. This is associated again to the output statement, but since we don't have, so it's not going to execute. This is a command we hardly use, we rarely use, I mean to say that. Okay, but still we have a provision, so that's why I thought of giving you idea for this one as well. Now the next important command that we widely use, okay, that is the input statement. If you remember, input statement allows a user to supply a value during the execution of the program. That means if I write over here A is equals to 20, B is equals to this, and I print A comma B, A comma B, no matter how many times I'm going to run this program, it's going to give the same output. It's not going to change. Why? It's a constant. Value is not going to change. Whereas if I use input statement, it will allow you to supply the value during the execution of the program. That means every time value will get changed. For example, enter first number, let's say, and that first number is stored in A. And if I use again enter second number, and this time I wrote B, and okay, and then I'm going to print A comma B. Now you see the difference. It's going to ask you to supply the value during the execution of the program. That means value is not constant now. I can change every time I run. Let's say 8 5. This time 8 5. If I run this program again, now again it's going to ask you a value that's going to get stored in the same variable. So what is the difference over there? The difference is that it will give you an opportunity to supply a value that can change every time you run the program actually. Okay, so if you are not aware what the value is supposed to be, or if you are trying to write a program using a same value, or using a same variable, if you try to supply a multiple values every time you run, in that case only input statement can help you. Okay, you're simply assigning a value into a variable like let A is equals to 20 is not going to help you, because once you assign a value saying that let A is equals to 20, that is permanent. It's not going to change until and unless you come across certain other techniques, but this value is going to be constant. Whereas over here in the input statement, it will allow you to change the value of that variable every time you execute in the QBASIC program. So I hope I made it clear. Now, the next statement that we have is also equally important to us. That is the line input. Okay, that is the line input. Before that, I'd like to show you this one. See, input enter a word. For example, it's going to ask you to supply a word, and where do you want to store that word? Since we are talking about the word, so that is the string value, so string value should be stored in a string variable. So I did this. Okay, now I'm going to print this value. Okay, your entered value was $8, for example. Now I'm going to run. See, okay, now I'm going to write mango. Since this is a season of mango, so I wrote mango. Okay, now mango. Okay, now if I run it, it gives your entered value was mango. Now what if I run the same program and I write mango orange? It gives the same. There is no difference. But what if you'd like to supply a value that can hold around up to 255? Normal variable is not capable of doing that. So in that case, we use line input. So there is another one importance over here. Line input will help you to store all those strings into a single one variable actually. So for example, if I write over here, rather than using your line input, as I mean to say, rather than using an input statement, if I use line input, so let's say line input, I'm going to say $8 and then print $8. Now if I run it, the entire statements, whatever you are supposed to provide over here, will get stored in single one variable, which is not possible only with the $8. If I run it, let's say my testing data, even it's supporting the delimiter that we have already discussed. Even the separator is going to accept. Whereas if I remove it, okay, and I write simply input, now let's see what's going to happen. I'm going to write my testing separated by this data. Will it accept? No. Why? Because there was the separator. The separator is accepted only with the help of line input. I hope I made it clear. If I use line input and I supply a variable, in that variable, no matter how many values you are providing, separated by comma or any symbol is going to accept it, whereas the input is not going to accept that. So that is the difference between input and line input. Now again, if I make it over here, line input, and I run the program, you see it's going to accept the same value, my testing value. See, though we have a comma in between, it's going to accept. So that's why line input sometimes it helps you a lot actually. So you need to understand the difference between input and line input in this way. So we have another one, that means the last statement for this session, that is the swap. Okay, now swap statement is used to simply exchange the value between the variable, but you need to make sure the data type are same. For example, let me tell you, let A is equals to 20, let B is equals to 10. I print A comma B, what will be the output? Make a guess. Of course, 2010. Now, but after that, if I do this, and again I print, okay, giving a print without a data means blank space. Now you see the output. Did you notice the difference? That means the purpose of swap statement is to exchange the value. That means swapping a value. The value of A will go to the value of B, and the value of B will come to the value of A. That means when I say print A, though initial value of A was 20, but we have swapped with the B. The value of B is what? 10, and the value of B will come to A, and the value of A will go to B. That means over here output will be reverse. Over here, what is the output? Have a look again. 2010. But afterwards we printed the same statement, the same variable, but it's giving value in reverse. Why? Because we swap. That means we simply exchange the value with each other. That is the use of the swap statement. So these were the basic statements for the part 1. Practical implementation, we made it in 2. Of course, we do have much more your basic statements to be understood, that we'll be discussing in our next session. So if you find this tutorial very fruitful, please also do encourage me by pressing a like and subscribe button. Thank you.